People of the State of Michigan versus Joseph Jarrell Johnson. This is file 2023603. And Mr. Johnson's appearing by video with Ms. Hines, and Mr. Gabry is the prosecutor and is set for sentencing today after Mr. Johnson pled no contest to a charge of discharge of a firearm from a motor vehicle, which is a felony punishable by up to 10 years, and felon in possession of a firearm, which is a felony punishable by up to 5 years. The plea agreement involved dismissal of the other charges of discharge of a vehicle from a motor vehicle, felony firearm, and the habitual fourth offense notice. So, Ms. Hines, does Mr. Johnson have any objection to continuing on video today?
Joseph, do you have any objection to conducting your sentencing by video today?
No, ma'am.
Do you need to speak to Mr. Johnson as to the accuracy of the report?
I can confirm in the record. Joseph, you've received the PSI reports. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions that need to be made to the report? I found none.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Gabry, do you have any additions, corrections, or deletions?
I do not, Your Honor.
All right. So in terms of scoring the various counts, in the charge of discharge of a firearm from a motor vehicle, the agent recommends that the prior record variable be scored at 55 points, level E. Any objection to that?
No.
No, Your Honor.
And in terms of the offense variables, the agent recommends 30 points, level 3, but I have questions about OV14 and OV19. And in OV14, it's just not clear from the report. Well, first of all, too, there would be one as to OV4. Not OV4, sorry, OV9, number of victims. The agent scored 0, but when I reviewed the report, it appeared that there were at least 3 people in the home that was shot at by Mr. Johnson. And again, it was just a one line that they spoke to the victim and he indicated 2 other people were in the home at the same time. I don't, and that's all I have. So what about that, Mr. Gabry?
Well, Your Honor, obviously in reading the report too, concern, gun was being discharged in a residential area. It was at a home. I have no reason to disbelieve the identified victim that he had individuals in the home. So I think it would be appropriate if our position as required by statute is to score to the highest potential value. I do think that this statement alone would meet the preponderance standard for the court to score that variable.
Okay, Mrs. Hines?
Yeah, this is a difficult one for me. I too looked at that as well. I guess it's not clear where the actual shooting occurred. Was it actually at a home? So I think my argument is we heard, the report says we heard gunshot, but I don't know if we know where the actual shooting occurred. I know they found 1 bullet that was in a shed, but that's not a home where somebody was living.
And that's what I had trouble with from the agent's description of the offense. Was it appeared the police were called regarding shots fired, and it appeared that in there no one saw directly the shots being fired. One person saw the gun out the window, but doesn't indicate they saw the shot being fired. The other persons indicate they heard the shots, and then the video that they mention indicates that they could hear the shots before the the car came into the screen and then it continued on and accelerated quickly away. So I don't know if these were shots in the air, shots towards the house. It hit a shed, one of them did, I know that.
Your Honor, if I could draw the court's attention to page 5 of the PSI, that pre-sentence investigation includes text messages purportedly by the defendant, which he says, I shot at him, and earlier, before we go into the breakdown of the text on the bottom part of the page, the sentence says, analyst Robert collected several text conversations where Joseph Johnson states he just did a shooting in Sturgis and then he shot at him. And further, I shot at him 8 times. I guess if Dylan is the one that's referring to who else is in the place where he's at.
All right.
Hey, Your Honor, that wasn't even 8 shots.
Hey, Mr. Johnson, you pled no contest, and we took the police report as a factual basis, and so that's one of the things about taking it.
Yeah, I'm saying in the police report, it says 6 shots, 5 shots or something like that.
I'll leave it to the court to rule. I'm not gonna, I just.
Well, you're right. He's indicating that now this is bravado. Is this truth? Is this whatever? But he's texting people that I shot at him 8 times. Whether they confirm whether they found 6 or 8, he says he shot 8 times. He says he shot at the victim, and the victim says the neighbors on the corner seen your truck. All they said so far is a black, it says back, but full-size truck. Ashley's in my house and I was also, bub. There's cops out here right now. Go lay low somewhere. All right, so I do find that at least 2 people were placed in danger. I can't find more than 10. So I do find a basis to score OV9 at 10 points. Now I don't know if you know more or not, but the only thing it says is that he was the driver. So I take it he wasn't with anybody else that was driving and he was shooting out the window. It's enough that he was shooting out the window. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so I won't score OV14. But OV19, interference with the administration of justice, when he did speak to the police, and you have no obligation to speak to the police, but if you choose to speak to the police, you have an obligation to be truthful and not make up stories. And throughout that, he said he didn't know anything about it, didn't have the car, hadn't been in the car, yet his text messages from his phone indicate an admission, and then the phone itself and the pictures of the phone, where it was then placed on Facebook Marketplace with him in the picture, shows that he was not being honest. And he's pled no contest, so I can find that he was not being honest. So I'll score 10 points there. With that then, 10, 25, 35, 40, 50 points. At 50 points, the guidelines now go to 29 to 57. I'm sorry, 38 to 76. It's a level 5.
I believe that's accurate math and an accurate reading of the grid, Your Honor.
Ms. Hines?
Yes, it is inaccurate of the grid.
All right, thank you. All right, so Ms. Hines, what would you like to say?
I will say Joseph has been cooperative with me. It's one of my few defendants that have followed up, made phone contact with me. He was prompt in my office. I know he has pending charges in District Court in Branch County and LaGrange County that he would like to get followed up. We would ask that the court consider that in its sentencing. Obviously, my client does not want to be sent to the Department of Correction and would want local jail time. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you pled no contest, but this is your opportunity. You have no obligation to speak, but this is your opportunity to address the court as to what you'd like me to know. Is there anything you'd like to say?
I would like to take responsibility of my actions and apologize to the city of Sturgis in the court.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Gabriel.
Your Honor, I also appreciate Mr. Johnson's attitude about this. And there was a great deal of police work that went into this particular case. I don't take any joy in the fact that the guidelines is properly scored, even without our recent discussion, still would basically advise the court that there should be a prison sentence. If the court were to go downward to the level where whether or not DOC feels he might be able to go into boot camp, and the court at some later point in time decided that might be a good program that would benefit Mr. Johnson, that might be one way to go versus guideline sentence. But I do think that the degree of recklessness and danger that was created does rise above the level of a local sentence.
All right, thank you. I'd love to say that this was the only time I've ever seen this case, but for some reason in the last few years, we've seen more and more of these where people just decide that they're going to shoot a gun. Mr. Johnson pled no contest in this, so I don't have an understanding as to the why behind it, and the report doesn't give a good reason as to why. Apparently the victim is a friend of Mr. Johnson's, and so it didn't make any sense as to the why. But Mr. Johnson had been convicted of a felony which prevented him from being in possession of a firearm, and then he is out riding and shooting, and it's not up in the air, it's towards buildings, because one was found in the shed in the backyard of a property. The recklessness there, the driving with that is dangerous, and just like the other gentlemen that I've had that have done this, the guidelines show that it's a very serious charge. Mr. Gabriel's indicated that in light of Mr. Johnson's, and even in the report, I think when questioned, he indicated that even though he pled no contest, he agreed that the report was accurate, and he takes responsibility for his actions. And it's not much to say that, it is, to acknowledge that you did wrong and to accept it and not make excuses for anything is refreshing. So I'll follow the recommendation of the agent as far as a placement in the Department of Corrections on both counts, concurrent with each other, in the amount of 2 years to 10 years, credit for 38 days served. And there is a $136 state cost and $130 crime victims assessment, $68 for each count, so that's $136. I won't order any additional court costs, fines, attorney's fees. Mr. Johnson, I won't indicate whether or not, I have any objection to SAI or what's called boot camp. Department of Corrections will do an analysis and find out whether or not you're qualified. And if so, they'll write to me, and then at that point I'll look at the file again, and I'll give you an opinion as to whether or not, and I'll give them an opinion as to whether or not I object or not, or if I do object, do I agree to have it at a later date, or do I object completely? So, but I'll look at it at that time. They do that whether I say I have no objection even right now or not. Mr. Johnson, your sentence is below the guidelines on one of the counts. It is the same. It is within the guidelines on the other count, but you have the right to ask the Court of Appeals for leave to review your case and for the appointment of an attorney at county expense in order to do so. Given 3 forms advising of what your rights on appeal are, I'd ask you to sign 1 copy acknowledging that you received them, and if you wish to appeal, you need to fill the rest out, return to the court within 42 days. All right, and that will conclude the case.